I think that there are gems locked up in the stories that women never tell. So while it was scary to write a book at this stage, at this age, ultimately, if I did not, it would be a disservice to women from my generation, and it would be in service to the patriarchy.
Welcome to Newsweek Conversations. I'm here with Elaine Welteroth. Elaine, you were the first African-American to serve as a beauty editor at Condé Nast. You were the second African-American to hold the title of editor-in-chief on any title. And you were the youngest editor-in-chief in Condé Nast history. And as if that's not enough, you've written a book, more than enough. The book's been optioned for a television show. And you're currently a judge on Project Runway. Did I miss anything? It seems pretty impressive already.
Well, I will
You'll
say...
correct me already, perfect.
Well, no, I'll say that actually I think my biggest accomplishment is that
Yeah.
I'm no longer the youngest editor-in-chief in Condé Nast
Oh, that's
history.
true. That's
and
true.
there is a new editor-in-chief who is even younger and who is also a black woman.
Yes, I saw that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what I'd love to do here is sort of start at the beginning and move through, kind of like you did in your book. So, you know, you grew up in California. What was it like growing up?
Northern California, not Southern California. There's a difference.
There is.
Those who know.
There is a big difference. What was it like growing up as one of the few girls of color in the area in which you lived?
You know, so I wrote this chapter in my book called White Paper Family, which
Yeah.
I think perfectly encapsulates what it feels like to kind of learn for the first time that you're different or other, you know, because you're not born black or white. You're not born even, you know, boy or girl. Someone tells you who you are. They label you. And over time, you sort of fall in line, and you sort of there's stereotypes that are sort of put onto you, right? And I remember being in preschool. This is my first memory in life, was being in preschool and being given an assignment at school where we had to create a family collage. And I just remember at that point, I didn't have race, I didn't have gender. I was just like a kid living in the world and having a ball. But in that moment, I remember all the kids just opening magazines and cutting out people. And I was just like flipping through these magazines. And I realized there's no one in these magazines that actually looks like me or my family. And there was an interesting thing that happened in that moment. I mean, I remember this feeling of shame. And I remember just feeling embarrassed and hot. Like my skin was hot to the touch. And I didn't want to be different. I felt for the first time what it was to be other. And so I just looked around and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna do what everyone else is doing. I'm gonna cut out white people. And so I did, and I started making my white paper family, and a teacher comes up to me and says, it's sort of awkward. She realizes like what's going on here. This girl has a complex. She thinks she's white. This is awkward, and tries to point me in the direction of like the sole black girl in one of these magazines. And she's like, "What about her? You look just like her." Of course, I look nothing like her. So I just ignored her and kept going. And I came home with my white paper family, and my mother, who is a very proud black woman, took one look at it and said, "Houston, we have a problem." And she sat me down at the table with my brother and pulled out Ebony and Essence magazines and made us redo the assignment together. And she let me keep my dad is white, but he's a carpenter, and I made him this like suave GQ dude with a suitcase and with a briefcase and like this suit, kind of like yours, which he's literally never worn in his life. And she's like, "I'm gonna let you keep him, but that's just as much of a lie as that little white girl that you made yourself." And so then she put that picture up on my bedroom wall, and it was the first thing I saw every morning. It was the last thing I saw every night, and it became this reminder of who we are, who I am, and this reminder to have pride in that, regardless of what the magazines said. about me. And yeah, and I think it captures.
So you wrote about that in the book,
I
and,
did,
and one
yeah.
of the things that moved me was the gentle way in which your mother did that.
Yeah.
You know, she didn't say you did a terrible job.
Right.
She said, you know, that's well, you can say it in your own words, but she was empowering in the way that she communicated with you about it.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah, it was a loving redirection.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which I thought was great, because
Yeah.
you can go the other way.
Yeah, and
easily.
It could, but I think what was important about that moment in hindsight is that sometimes the things that hurt us the most are the things that instill a passion or a purpose into us. And so, you know, it's like, it's not a coincidence that I grew up and one day became an editor of a magazine, and that I felt this charge and this fire in my belly to make sure that the pages were in that magazine were more reflective of what the world really looks like, because I knew what it was like to be a young girl looking through a magazine and not seeing myself, and what that felt like and what that did to my self-esteem over time. So I think, you know, it's something that ultimately I think empowered me in my career.
Yeah. Something else I learned from your book was that fashion can, you know, and certainly I'd say Teen Vogue was a little bit like this before you were involved. Fashion can be skin deep, but you certainly explained to me how it can be empowering, and it can be self-affirming, and it can give you agency. When was the first time you really felt that about fashion, and about how it can be a force to help you become who you are today?
You ask me this as I'm looking at your frames.
Yes.
That are like very cool.
Thank you.
Have a little flair. I'm here for it. And your socks, super colorful.
From you?
He's not just a man in a suit, y'all. It's all in the details. He knows what's up. No, I don't know if there was a singular moment. I do remember watching my mother transform in front of the mirror before church on Sundays, or, you know, in the car in like, if anyone follows me on Instagram, you know that I do backseat beat. Like, I'm always in a cab going somewhere, and I'm always doing my makeup in the backseat. Get that from my mom, who would drive me to school, and like at the red lights, she'd stop and she'd put her lipstick on in the rearview mirror. And I just remember the way that, like, that transformation, that outward transformation, completely altered the way that she walked. It altered the way that she felt. It helped her project confidence, and I think from that I got inspired, and I started to think about the role that beauty plays and the role that fashion plays, particularly for women, but I think for everyone. It's a signal to the world. It's a signal that tells the world how you want to be seen, how you want to be approached, and I think in that regard, in a world like ours, it can be a powerful tool to help kind of counteract those messages that sometimes make you feel like you're not enough, or you're not enough of something. And I think so many women in particular carry that, because it's an internalized message that we've been conditioned to believe for generations. So anything that we can do to make us feel like we can do anything, or make us feel like our most confident version of ourselves, I think is a powerful tool. And I think beauty and fashion happen to be one of them. And that's not to say if you don't like lipstick, you're not a confident woman. But, you know, we all have different kind of tools and tricks in our back pocket that make us feel like our best selves. And so I think I inherited the love of personal style from my mom. And for her, it definitely was a part of her confidence.
It certainly was a learning experience for me to learn how you could use those things to make yourself sort of go out in the world and be better and stronger for it. I just hadn't thought of it like that.
I think, and actually I think I want to amend my answer, because when I think about the aspects of beauty or fashion that have made me feel most empowered, it's actually not about putting anything on. It's about actually taking it off. And I remember for a lot of my career, when I dealt with what I think a lot of people of color in predominantly white spaces deal with, which is what I call the assimilation syndrome, where you're made to feel that your natural state is not professional enough, it's not acceptable, it's not beautiful. I think when you're made to feel that way, you shrink and you hide parts of yourself. and that's reflected in your beauty regimen. You might wear your hair straight. You might pull it back because you don't want it to distract from your intelligence or your authority. And I did that for a good chunk of my career. And I think when I felt most powerful is when I started to embrace my natural hair texture, which is up right now. Which, so some of you guys probably were like, "Who is she?" Because people didn't know.
I'm so disappointed.
I know. I'm sorry. I put it up in a bun today, but usually my hair is really, really big and curly, and it wasn't always that way. But for me, it's become over time, over my career, as I've gotten more comfortable with who I am and comfortable in my skin and comfortable finding my voice, my hair has just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So like it went from, my biggest moments in life, I had to have my hair straight, because to me, that was the Eurocentric kind of standard of beauty. And that's what would be most acceptable and most special. So for interviews, I'd either have it straight or pull my hair back. And now it's like, a special day, it means the bigger the better. And that doesn't mean today's not special. It just means I wanted a nice snatch today. That's all that means.
You took a different route to university than you originally hoped, shall we say, which you can talk as much or a little bit as you want. But I'm sort of interested, you ended up going to Cal State rather than, you really wanted to apply for Stanford and you never did.
Yeah.
How do you think that's affected you? Because I mean, there are things that you learn from being in not such an elite institution that you wouldn't learn from being in such an elite institution. Yeah. So now you are where you are, and you're looking back on your whole life. Regrets, no regrets? How do you think that's affected your life today?
Yeah, no regrets.
Yay.
However, I will say it used to be my biggest regret. I grew up aspiring to go to Stanford, and then I fell in love when I was 15 and derailed me. And he went to a state school. So I thought, I'll go to this state school. I'd never even applied to Stanford or any UC or Ivy League, which, how did my parents let that happen? I convinced them probably that it wasn't because of him.
That's my follow-on question is, how did that happen? I mean,
listen, they have some explaining to do, because that's not happening in my house in the future when I have children. But anyway, so I went to this state school, and you guys, when I got there, guess what happened? I found out he wasn't even enrolled. He was lying. So here I am, stuck at this state school that I never imagined going to, essentially followed a boy to college. And
don't do that.
That's just, that was my biggest regret for a long time. I came out of it, and it's all worked out fine, okay? But when I moved to New York and I was introduced to, this world of like Ivy League prep school folks, I was extraordinarily intimidated, and I felt like I carried this chip on my shoulder throughout all of my 20s. And then I realized, honestly, I wouldn't change a thing. First of all, I was able to pay off my student loans, okay, by 24, I think.
Woo-hoo.
And I learned, I think, the most important lesson, which is, it doesn't matter what your background is or what your pedigree is. At the end of the day, you have to have the vision and the drive to get where you want to go. And I think it made me hungrier. I think it made me work harder. And I think that it also introduced me to people who have been my friends throughout my whole career, who are not friends with me because of what I do. They're friends with me because of who I am and what we've been through together. And so it's a grounding effect. So I wouldn't change it for anything. But I also wouldn't advise following a boy to school. Let me just say that.
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, and you already answered the question, but if you had a daughter, you wouldn't let her do that, right?
Definitely not.
There you go. Just checking.
No.
Just checking. You have had some incredible mentors in your life. You think that everyone needs these mentors to get through life?
I wouldn't say everyone needs a mentor to get where they want to go. Everyone has their own path. And for me, having mentors has made a huge difference. In fact, I don't think I would be here on this stage with you right now. I don't think I would have been in New York if I didn't have a woman who opened the door for me first and who took me under her wing. I found out about a woman named Harriet Cole who had a really successful career in magazine journalism and then was able to kind of spin out and become a multiple-time best-selling author. And she had what would be considered a podcast now, a radio show that was syndicated all over the country, and this television presence and this consulting business. She had so much going on that in all of those things, there was this through line that it was like this. She created this intersection for herself in media. This is before the age of Instagram, when everyone was a brand and everyone was a multi-hyphenate and everyone was doing a million things. And I just remember thinking, you can do that? And it just opened my mind to the possibilities of what I could be. And so I stalked her relentlessly until she gave me an informational phone call. And this is when I was about to graduate from college, lived in California. I had zero contacts in New York, zero contacts in the magazine industry. And she took my phone call. And then
she took your phone call because you were unbelievably persistent.
Annoying. And they just wanted me to stop calling. This was the only way to get me to stop calling because I was going to fly to New York to bring her coffee. And they were like,
that.
Please
In the book,
don't.
you said that. Like, there's this moment, I'm going to paraphrase for you. You're on the phone with her assistant. She's on the phone with her assistant. She's like, yeah, I'll just come by next week and give you a coffee. She's like, don't you live in California? And then the assistant says like, yeah, don't do that. Don't fly in and deliver coffee.
But it worked because she
totally
set up the
worked.
call.
After that, you had the call.
Totally. And so I had this amazing phone call with her. And then before getting off the phone, I remember saying, if there's ever an opportunity to work with you, please, please, please keep me in mind. And then I said, but if I never speak to you again, just know that you've already changed my life. And it sounds like a really good line, which it actually is. But I meant that. I hung up and I was on fire. I planted so many seeds, it sent out so many resumes, and I thought I would never hear back from her again. And then in a kind of crazy turn of events, she called me back 5 months later when I was 30 days out from moving to New York for a different internship at a different magazine, and she convinced me to work with her. And my trial run was a cover shoot with Serena Williams, and we just had this kind of crazy Cinderella career love story. And at the end of that shoot, she hired me at Ebony magazine, and I moved to New York to work for her. And it was the recession. Do you guys remember the recession? I mean, literally everyone was, like, a lot of my friends were losing their jobs, like left and right. So every day I thought was my last, and I lived like that. And I ate a stack of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches at my desk every day. But I was like thrilled to be be
Did someone call you PBJ?
PB&J was my nickname at my first job at the office. And she just really, she took me under her wing and she trained me, she groomed me, and to this day she's been there for me. And I can't tell you how many, every step of my career there's been a magical sort of guardian angel in the form of a Black woman who has come and been by my side and helped open doors for me. And actually every female boss I've ever had has in some way or another been an extraordinary mentor. And so I do think that if you can find someone who will take the time and take an interest in nurturing you and helping you and hearing you out, and helping you get where you want to go, it's invaluable. And you kind of have to put yourself out there. It's not going to just come to you. You really do have to be intentional about cultivating those kinds of relationships and bringing something to the table of value to them too, because it is a mutually beneficial dynamic. I think we should change our thinking about mentorship. It's not top down. Sometimes it's peer to peer. Sometimes it's bottom up. I feel I get mentored by my mentees for sure. They keep me on the cutting edge. They keep me, I'm like, should I have TikTok? Yeah, I'm working on that.
It's so true. I do the same thing, and it's so true. I learn as much from my mentees as they learn from me. We just teach each other different things.
Totally.
So one of the challenges I think a lot of people have, you've always been very clear, I want to do this is where I want to go, I'm going to go get there, and then you had an incredible work ethic, gone out and made it happen for yourself. There are people who want to work hard but don't know what they want to do. They don't have a clear goal. Yeah. What advice do you have for those kinds of people that are like, oh, I don't really know what I want to do? I
spent a lot of time there before. I have to say, senior year of college was the scariest time of my life, and no one prepares anyone for what it is to go from a prescribed kind of K through 12, then college, and then to come to the end of that and have to be flung into the real world. And suddenly everyone's asking you, like, what's your passion? and what, and it's just sort of like, I don't know. I was just trying to be the best at like whatever was in front of me at that point. So to answer that question felt really overwhelming for me, but I knew I wanted a job that was fulfilling and that I was passionate about, because I knew that was the only way I was going to excel. What I would say to anybody who doesn't exactly know what their passion is, doesn't exactly have a sense of direction, and is searching, is your only obligation is to keep going, just to continue to put one foot in front of the other, and the path will become clear. The only way you will not find it is if you stay stuck in fear, and if you allow fear to paralyze you from making any moves. I think the other thing I would say is, don't just follow your gut. People say follow your gut, and I'm always like, what does your gut sound like? You know, because what's loudest is usually fear. What I say to myself, what I would offer to this imaginary person who's asking me this question is, follow your enthusiasm. You know when you're excited, and you know when you're not.
So true.
You know the difference between dread and enthusiasm. Fear can make us feel dread, and we might still move in that direction, because along with the dread comes a great salary, a great title to tell our parents. You know, it could be just like the path of least resistance.
Yeah.
But if you feel dread, that is not your most passion-filled path. It's not. So it's going to ultimately lead to a dead end. You're going to feel like you are dying, and not to be dramatic, but I think in order to stay alive and to stay expansive and growing and just excited about being alive, is to follow that path that just gives you that spark. And I hope this doesn't sound too woo-woo, but I think it really applies to almost anyone.
No, I agree.
No matter what career path it is that you're on or you're pursuing. So follow your enthusiasm.
In that vein, have you seen the roles of women and women of color change over the course of your career? Has it become better or worse, or the same, or same challenges, different challenges?
This is a difficult question to answer with brevity, because we could talk about this all day. I think.
Yeah, I know you have a hard stop, so don't do that.
I think that the conversation around women in leadership and diversity and inclusion has certainly become more trendy. And I think that when conversations become more acceptable, there is a certain push for change. But I think we have a lot more work to do to see how those conversations and those buzzwords are really translating into real sustainable change from the inside out of companies. I come from the media and fashion world, and it's a very image-driven world. I think the images have changed drastically for the better. We see more women of color on the cover of magazines than we've ever seen. And same goes for campaigns and runways, and same thing goes for different types of diversity. You know, but what I think will represent true progress is when I know that the inside of organizations, when the complexion of those companies is changing on the inside and from the top down.
Yeah.
And I think in that regard, we have a long way to go.
Yeah, the statistics are not great.
The statistics are not great.
Yeah. So in other words, we have some good indicators, but we ain't there yet.
Correct.
Yeah.
But I will say, in terms of women leaders, I have had the luxury of really only ever working with women bosses. That's the benefit of working in fashion. And I've learned so much from every woman boss that I've ever had. And in fact, I actually, when I find myself in rooms with men at the top, it's foreign to me. It is. I'm not used to it, because I come from a female-dominated work environment, and I think that's pretty cool.
Elaine, I want to thank you for spending time with us. It was a great conversation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all for attending.
My pleasure. Thank you all so much. Thank you. That was fun.